Good people, this is the new Zenbook S13 OLED from Asus. We did a sneak peek of this last week, but today we're spilling all the details. So that includes pricing, availability, and most importantly, performance. Now, this laptop itself is pretty good, but the Zen 3 processor makes it amazing. Let me explain. Usually at this point, I get into the laptop's design, how it has changed from the last generation, and the other things. But don't worry, I'll get into that later on because I know exactly what you're all here for, and that's why I'm so excited about this thing. Because there is a Ryzen 7 6800U chip that Asus has packed inside this teeny tiny thin and light laptop. These new U-series CPUs is the response to Intel's Alder Lake series in the thin and light market. It still uses the same 8-core 16-thread design as last year's 5800U, but it's got the updated Zen 3 Plus architecture, which is focused on improving efficiency, delivering better battery life, and hitting higher sustained clock speeds over time. Oh, and it's also got support for DDR5 and PCI Gen 4, so that's pretty cool. But the most important thing is that this laptop is rocking RDNA 2 graphics. And let me tell you, that's a huge update from the Vega design AMD processors I've used since, well, forever now. Now, believe it or not, integrated graphics was one of the areas where Ryzen ended up getting its butt kicked by Intel's Xe, and now get ready for some serious changes, my friends. Now, I do want to quickly talk about pricing because it starts at $1,100 and that gets you a Ryzen 5 6600U with 6 cores and 12 threads, 8 GB of LPDDR5 memory, half a terabyte of storage, and a non-touch display. I'm not sure what the exact type and resolution here is since these numbers were provided to us by AMD, so take them with a grain of salt since usually in terms of pricing, they've been higher at retail, though time will tell. Anyways, you can configure the 6600U with an upgraded display and double the memory for these prices. But if you want to step it up to the 6800U, it's going to cost you $1,300. And the spec that I have over here will retail for just a tad below $1,500 US. Now, the million-dollar question is, can you actually buy this? Well, to be honest, no one's been able to give us a solid answer. But if last year is any indication, we reviewed the Zenbook 13 OLED with the 5800U on May 30th, and it was only available in limited quantities in October with better availability around December. I hope I'm wrong, but with the global shipping and component crisis going on at the same time, it could happen again. All right, I'm gonna dive right into battery life because it's probably the most important element of any thin and light laptop. So let's put AMD's claims to the test, and I'm going to be using the most apples to apples comparison I can by comparing it to last year's model. I mean, this isn't a perfect comparison since the new Zenbook has a larger and less efficient OLED screen along with DDR5 memory, but the specs are pretty much the same, right down to the 67 watt-hour battery. But obviously the screen does count for a whole lot. So even though the upgrade to Windows 11 took a chunk out of its battery life, the 2021 model is still our battery champ, but not by a whole lot. I'm willing to bet that if it had the same screen, the 6800U version would actually win by a good margin. There's another important comparison here too, and that's against the Yoga 9i and its Alder Lake i7 1260p. It's got a bigger battery, but it got hammered in this test. I mean, it wasn't even close, so right now it looks like Alder Lake has some efficiency problems that negatively impact its battery life. And in this market, that's a bad thing, guys. When putting the system under a heavier load, the screen becomes a non-issue, so we're basically seeing a tie between the two Zenbooks. I mean, both have the exact same CPU power limits and identical battery capacities, but the crazy thing is how far ahead they are. I mean, you'd think other laptops running at similar wattages would be a lot closer, but no, the Ryzen CPUs are still champs here. All right, so I guess that sets the stage for some performance testing, and the Zenbook S13 comes with 3 different performance modes. So there is the balanced, which is the out-of-the-box setting, and then there is performance and whisper mode. Now, each of these end up behaving very differently. When it comes to power delivery, both performance and balance modes are identical for about 2.5 minutes. They start at 30 watts and then level out around 25 watts, so they'll perform the same in shorter workloads. But while performance sticks like glue to that 25 watt mark, balanced gradually drops off to 17 watts. And when you switch things to whisper mode, I won't really talk about it since its only focus is to give you an ultra quiet experience. The interesting thing here is there's actually very little differences between these two modes when it comes to frequencies, at least for the most of the test. By the end, the gap is roughly 400 megahertz, which can actually be a whole lot when it comes to real-world performance. But are you actually sacrificing anything by just sticking to a higher setting? Well, the answer is yes. That performance setting ends up running at or near 90 degrees more often, especially in shorter tasks. It then settles down to a much more reasonable temperature while balance gets there a lot faster. Now you might be wondering why the Zenbook S13 is hitting a higher frequency and power envelope through the whole test, while its temperatures start going lower after the 5-minute mark. Well, that's because its fans gets a lot louder than in other modes. And I mean, a lot, guys. This points towards performance being great if you want to crunch through CPU-intensive workloads over longer periods of time, while balanced is perfect for everyday uses. It's just so much easier to live with. And compared to the last generation, the new S13 runs at about the same temperature and power limits, but the 6800U can run at higher sustained frequencies. Now, that could be due to cooling, variances from one processor to the next, or any number of other reasons. But I'm thinking it's also because of the new efficiency improvements to Zen3 Plus. Do those clock speed improvements lead to better results? Well, let's check out what we're putting up the Zenbook up against, because the lineup includes everything from last year's Zenbook to the Surface Pro 8, which is the best performing Tiger Lake device we have ever tested. Then there's the i7 1260p in Lenovo's Yoga 9i, which should be a direct competitor to AMD's new CPU, and even a 5800U running at just 15 watts in the Aero 13. Let's start with real-world benchmarks. Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. I wasn't expecting much performance improvement from the 5800U to the 6800U, but it's definitely there. I mean, there's no reason to run out and upgrade since we're looking at between 3 and 7% uplifts here. I mean, some synthetic tests will blow things out of proportion, but overall, it looks like the 6800U is able to push things just a bit further and allows AMD to compete a bit better against Alder Lake. Remember, this refresh is a way to keep Ryzen CPUs in a fighting position until Zen 4 arrives sometime next year. And let's talk about that 1260p too, because it's running around the same wattage as the 6800U, and it delivers really competitive results, especially in apps that are lightly threaded. Even multi-threaded programs have a pretty close race, but I do want to stop here on Premiere for a second because you'll notice something. AMD laptop processors used to get pounded by Intel in Premiere, but now with the new integrated graphics and its updated hardware encode and decode engines, it can actually compete directly with the best of the best. Finally. So the 6800U is a small evolutionary step in everyday tasks. But remember, the big new thing here is a quantum leap forward for graphics and gaming. The Vega GPU used in last year's CPUs is now half a decade old, and yeah, it was showing its age 2 years ago. Now, with the 680M's Navi core that's based on RDNA 2, it isn't even close. And this is a big deal for anyone that wants to do some light gaming on a thin and light laptop. The 6800U just walks all over everything else, and it beats the 5800U by between 40 and 75. Yeah, you heard that right, 75%. That means it also spanks the i7 1260p pretty hard. But there's something I need to talk about here because I don't think we've seen the best Alder Lake has to offer with the Yoga 9i. Look, Lenovo might be running their overall CPU power at 23 watts, but they've set aside just 10 watts for the 1260p's Xe graphics, while the 680M here is chugging back about 15 watts. Add Intel's driver issues into the mix, and yeah, it's not hard to understand why it's struggling here. Hopefully, I'll come across a laptop that allows Alder Lake to really flex its muscles, but I just haven't found one yet. A lot of you might not know this, but it takes a lot of time to piece together a review video or even an explain series. One of our main sources of acquiring digital assets for our videos has been through Storyblocks. They have access to a bunch of stock footage, vector files, and music tracks that enable us to give more life to our content. If you're looking for a hassle-free experience, they've got a plan that works for your budget with unlimited downloads, royalty-free content, and most importantly, diversity. If you want to learn more, click the link down below. All right, so now you know how the 6800U performs here, but that's only half the story, because is the Zenbook S13 actually a good enough laptop for the CPU? Well, I will say that build quality is a substantial upgrade over last year's model. It doesn't feel flimsy, and I didn't even notice any creaking or rattling noises inside. The hinge is smooth and stiff with minimal wobble, and it can be opened with one hand, which is really cool. The exterior design is pretty refreshing with the A monogram logo and this beautiful ponder blue finish. I do like this matte texture, and it does a really good job at resisting fingerprints. Now, given that this is made out of magnesium alloy, you actually won't compromise on the portability factor, since it only weighs around 2.2 pounds and it comes with a Zen height of just 15 millimeters. The cherry on top of that is that the included power brick is super compact and it can easily fit inside your backpack. You won't even notice it. And it charges the laptop via USB Type-C, so be mindful that it'll take away one usable USB port. Speaking of ports, this thing comes with 3 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C ports, with one of them supporting DisplayPort pass-through and power delivery. They brought back the headphone jack, but unfortunately they took away the full-size HDMI port and a full-size Type-A port. I'm a little disappointed about that. The interior space is very similar to last year's model. The only change is they fused a fingerprint sensor with the power button, and it works pretty well. The keys themselves are average. It still has that mushy feeling, just like the older model when you bottom out. They are backlit, but the brightness levels are not that great. Now, about this trackpad. It still features this fancy numpad that can be accessed by tapping right over here, and you can still play around with the brightness levels. But for some reason, the functionality of this trackpad itself is very bad. Both Mike and I have experienced countless cursor skipping issues. It also gets unresponsive at times to a point where I had to immediately rely on an external mouse. So it just was really frustrating. It could be our sample, but I just wanted to bring it up. This is what the webcam looks like on the new Zenbook S13 OLED. And right away, I can tell that there is a substantial improvement in quality compared to last year's model. And that's because of the 1080p sensor. They've also implemented some noise reduction techniques, and it works pretty well, as I can tell. Yeah, the microphone also sounds great. So let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. The speakers are located at the bottom, and what can I say? They don't sound that great. There's nothing really special about this. There's no bass. Trebles are okay, but yeah, even though they say that this thing is tuned by Harman Kardon, I think it's just marketing fluff, so don't fall for that. Okay, so ASUS is really pushing their OLED technology into their Zenbook laptops, and I think we're going to start to see a lot of them this year. In this case, as the name suggests, this laptop features a 2.8K OLED touch display. And they've shaved some bezels by expanding the aspect ratio to 16:10, which is awesome. So you get more vertical screen real estate. The colors are absolutely incredible with those gorgeous blacks and punchy saturation levels. And for my tests, my calibrator was only able to pick up 100% sRGB versus 133% that ASUS claimed. But the Adobe RGB and DCI-P3 numbers are really strong. I wouldn't worry about color accuracy with this panel, since it's an excellent option for editing photos and watching shows or movies. My only issue is the fact that it is a glossy screen, because the moment you take this thing outside, the reflections get absolutely annoying. Plus, it doesn't get bright enough. Our sample was only able to sustain a max sustained brightness of 360 nits. And remember, the 550 nit that ASUS is claiming here refers to a smaller percentage of the display achieving that in a shorter period of time. Also, OLEDs are generally known for having lower brightness levels, so keep that in mind. Now, I'm sure you guys have concerns regarding burn-in issues. And the good news is that ASUS has implemented pixel shifting algorithms and a few other features to prevent that. If you have the older model with the OLED display, comment down below what your experience has been so far, since these OLED care features were carried over from that. Now, getting under the hood of this laptop is once again challenging, just like last year's model. So you have to remove the rubber feet at the front in order to access the screws that holds the backplate. And once that's done, you can pop open the rest. And as you can see, the memory is soldered onto the PCB. The primary NVMe SSD is accessible, and the drive speeds are really fast. In fact, much faster than last year due to the upgrade to Gen 4. So it's right on par with the Alder Lake Thin and Light laptops. So here's the thing. Would I recommend spending $1,300 on the Zenbook S13 OLED? Well, it depends on what you're really looking for in a thin and light laptop. If you want best-in-class CPU performance, good IGP performance, and great battery life, this should be on the top of your list. There's no question to that. It doesn't provide a huge uplift versus previous gen in regular applications, but the switch to RDNA graphics puts it on a whole other level, guys. You see, what I look for in an Ultrabook is size, build quality, reliability, keyboard, trackpad, and most importantly, the display. This laptop checks marks most of those things except for the awful trackpad. Oh, and let's not forget about availability, because I have no idea when this thing's gonna hit store shelves. But I'll make sure to update you guys or pin it in the comments down below when they're actually available. So keep an eye out for that. But on that note, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're able to take away everything that you needed to know about the new Zenbook S13 OLED from Asus. Let us know what you guys think about this portable little beast. But yeah, until then, or until the next video, stay safe and spend responsibly.